this is the moment where the village comes together in a way that perhaps it wasn't coming together last month or the month before or the year before, but it's just gotta happen. It's literally got to happen, because when we take a step back, when we're silent, when we are too fatigued to follow directions, then the most vulnerable amongst us suffer. And I measure our success not by who the greatest of billionaires is doing. I measure our success by how our most vulnerable populations are faring. And right now they're scared.
Recorded at Amplified Studio in downtown Des Moines, Give and Grow is more than a podcast. It's a commitment to our community. Founded by Andy and Sarah Suzanen alongside the RIA Group, this initiative is dedicated to uplifting the organizations and individuals who work every day to make Central Iowa a better place for all. Welcome to the Give and Grow podcast, where we share the stories of the nonprofits transforming lives in our community. Each organization is featured in 3 episodes, offering a deeper, more personal look at their impact. Through conversations with passionate staff, generous donors, and the very people whose lives have been changed by their work, our hope is simple: to connect, inspire, and strengthen the bonds that make our community thrive.
So we get to launch Give and Grow by highlighting the expansive nonprofit Oakridge Neighborhood. Oakridge plays such a critical role in our community by providing affordable housing, along with family-centered social services and programs to hundreds of people in need each year. So it's a challenge to summarize all that Oakridge does, and I'm pleased to have its CEO, Deidre DeJear, here to help us understand her organization and learn more about the wins and challenges that Oakridge is experiencing these days. So welcome, Deidre.
Happy to be here.
So this is our first episode of Give and Grow, and also the first of 3 episodes that will feature Oakridge. So awesome. We'll interview you, and then the next one will be a board member, Carol Bodensteiner, and then we will feature a beneficiary. So Zami Denke will come in and talk to us as well. We're excited to get to know you and help raise awareness about all the good stuff you're doing.
It's always a good opportunity to talk about entities in our community that are helping to push the community forward. And more often than not, those very same entities that are pushing the community forward are very instrumental in being problem solvers in our community, because we got a lot of problems out there, and not everybody's getting in line to solve them. Most people want to get in line to talk about them, but perhaps there is a special, unique ability that some community members have in actually putting a plan to resolve it. And I'm really lucky that we're in a community, not just Oakridge, but just in the greater Des Moines community, where there's good people who are insistent on not just talking about the problem, but putting some intellectual thought about how we get over it.
That's encouraging. I really love Des Moines for that too. We're doers. I grew up on a farm. We're resourceful.
Yeah. Where'd you grow up?
Just south of Des Moines.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool
so
beans.
Real
like New
Irish
Virginia
Catholic
area?
Farm family.
Okay.
No, just south of Cumming.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
I take 35 south to go to Oklahoma when I go visit family.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So right by.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was great experience. And I know how I married an East Coaster, and they do know how to talk about things. They're very intellectual. And meeting my family, who we don't really talk that much. We do.
You do. And you can do without talking. It's like you just grunt and
kind of
give each other eye
Totally.
contact. No, that's not what you do. Yes, I know that family very well.
Yeah. So it's good to hear that you're experiencing the doers in Des Moines, because we do need a lot of them these days. So why don't you start us off by telling us how you describe Oakridge Neighborhood?
Mm-hmm. The most simplistic way to describe Oakridge is that it is more than just a home. That is really the easiest way for me to describe it. If you could imagine back during urban renewal, when highways and byways were trying to insert themselves in communities, Des Moines just so happened to be one of those communities with the insertion of 235. And what 235, while it brought in commerce for our community and it brought in visitors for our community, what it also did, perhaps the unintended or intended consequence, was that it disrupted an already existing thriving economy in the Des Moines area, which was a metropolis for Blacks in Des Moines. There were homes, single family homes, there were doctors, there were clubs, there were lawyers, anything and everything someone needed within their reach was there, which was incredibly important during a time where not everybody had vehicles. We didn't really have public transportation, so on and so forth. And so there was a disruption that occurred, and there were a group of nuns, faith community members, business leaders who saw what was left of Center Street after 235 came through and really wanted to preserve the integrity of that land with something that they could just produce. They wanted to preserve it with growth. And so therein was the plan to develop Oakridge Neighborhood. And there was a mission of preservation that existed there, but they went beyond just the home. They went beyond saying we need to help find our people to help find places to live. And they began to offer support services. They hired a social worker. They started a youth employment program for youth who wanted jobs and needed jobs. And then they started a child care program, which eventually became what is known to many as the highest rated child care service in the state, Oak Academy. And so I say all that to say, at that point in time when they were trying to preserve, what they didn't know that they were doing was really living out a vision of sustainability for Iowa families that it continued to exist today. There are organizations similar to Oakridge that were built in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, like Oakridge. My family grew up in housing organizations like Cabrini Green in Chicago, and there's others that I had family members who were in New Orleans in these types of spaces. And what sets Oakridge apart from all of these housing, at that time they called them projects, we don't use that term anymore, but what sets Oakridge apart from that is, one, Oakridge is still standing.
Right.
And the reason it's still standing is because of the supportive services. However, those supportive services would have meant nothing without the support of the community. And so that's the other added advantage. Because we have community members that support the organization and its mission, we're able to not only to continue to exist, but we're also able to provide these services in such a way that's paramount to none.
Yeah, I'm so impressed by the breadth of services that you're able to offer. And when did you get involved? How did you come to know Oakridge in the first place?
So I was approaching the former CEO, Teree Caldwell-Johnson, with a few concepts of work that I wanted to do in the community. And she said yes to those and created space for me to kind of get my hands dirty in that way. But she also offered me an opportunity to perhaps sharpen my skills at Oakridge. Now, mind you, at this time, I'm a new business owner, basically right out of college. And I think I know everything that is necessary to know in this world. And she was just so polite and kind to this child who felt like she knew everything, that she created space to teach this child who thought she knew everything. And so she eventually offered me a contract at Oakridge after I started volunteering for the organization on one of the event committees. The event committee was my way of getting to know the mission of Oakridge. There's nothing like getting involved in an event to get to know an organization.
Absolutely.
And so that was my intro. And so I was so impacted by getting to know the organization that I then started doing a little bit of storytelling. And that is what I originally got my second legitimate contract through Oakridge, to help tell the story of the good work that it was doing throughout our community. At that time, there were so many preconceived notions about what was happening in the community that the good was being overshadowed by those preconceived notions. And so we started to tell our story better amongst donors, amongst neighbors, neighbors, and even amongst residents in the Oakridge neighborhood, so that they could understand the impact of it. And
That's
an
important aspect too.
It was because the story needed to be told in more ways than one. And so, that trajectory really set us off leading into the 50th year and then the 55th year and going deeper into that storytelling. Because there's nothing like truly understanding the impact that you or someone around you has on a group of fellow community members. And I think that is what Oakridge is good at doing, is making that impact and telling the story to not only inspire more work to happen at Oakridge, but inspire work to happen all over. Yeah.
Yeah. To set an example, I do find that the storytelling is so impactful. And a lot of times, nonprofits are not so great at telling their own story, and I think
they're so busy. We've got all the things to do, and telling someone what we did is the last thing we've got time for. Right?
Exactly.
We did it next.
Right. It's so true. I mean, very, very true. So I appreciate that the organization valued that enough to make it a priority, because I do think that that's made a huge difference just from my limited standpoint of knowing Oakridge. And just being able to really see the community and in our community and know what you're doing and be able to be a good advocate and a good neighbor. I helped develop Mainframe Studios. So that was right on Center Street. And I was so glad to know the history of Center Street and being able to help tell that story. And I think the more people that are knowledgeable of our community history and think about the possibilities of what it can become and not only preserve, but move forward the great things that were there and were taken away from this community that made Des Moines great for Black people and people that were not served as well as others. So I was happy to have it a neighbor to Mainframe, and I'm really glad about the Oak Studio that ended up going in the lower level. It sounds like that's thriving.
Yes, it is.
That's so exciting.
Yes.
One question I think is always important to ask in especially executive directors and CEOs and board members is just about your budget. Donors like to know how you're doing financially. I saw that you, 2023, you had an annual report. I looked at that. You had about a $7.6 million budget. And a quarter of that is public funding. And recently you commented to KCCI when they were looking for comments about the scare that the current administration had on freezing public funding. Now we have to, as if fundraising wasn't hard enough, having to plan so much for uncertainty in the future, even though that funding was released eventually. Is that right?
So we were not an organization that was specifically impacting by a funding freeze, at least at this point in time. And at the time of the EOs, we weren't either, the executive orders. But needless to say, because of the impact of those orders, there have been some shifts that have been made. There have been shifts that have been made related to how funding organizations give. There have been shifts related to what types of programs people are willing to fund based on who it serves. And I say that from a federal level all the way down to a basic nonprofit organization who disperses funds. I have heard on many occasions that some are halting on the account that they might get sued, which is always an inevitable risk in delivering services. However, they're preemptively making those adjustments on the account of it. I've also heard that people are making these changes on the account that they might not receive federal funds because of how they are using those federal funds. from my vantage point, that is the prerogative of any person. If they have the power to choose, then they should use their power to do just that, choose. But what remains the same is the need that exists in our community.
Right.
The need to provide affordable and safe housing for our community members. For a state that is short in about 30,000 workforce units and a city of high density in Des Moines that is short on safe and affordable housing, that need's not going anywhere anytime soon. Oakridge addresses the need with childcare gaps and childcare shortages. That need is not going anywhere anytime soon. We know that when we look at our kindergarten reading scores, we know they can do better. Organizations like Oakridge, we're not glorified babysitters. We're there to literally teach our children and prepare them to walk through those classroom doors every August and go to kindergarten. The need for opportunities to provide for your family via having a job. We are working with individuals on resume prep, on prepping them for interviews. We even have a Ride to Jobs program so that people can have a dignified work experience and bring home the bacon, if you will, and be happy about providing for their families. None of those needs, and those are just a few of them that we meet the need for, none of those are going to go away anytime soon when we've got rows and rows of people who are being laid off from their jobs, including government workers, right? And so regardless of the funding mechanism, our role in this community is to make sure the pathway is there for people to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. There are times when government is completely and totally invested in that. There are times when administrations are not invested in that. When they're not invested, then we pull ourselves up with our bootstraps, if you will, as community members, specifically those who've got boots and who've got straps that work, and we fit the bill for how much it's going to cost. The burden that the federal government is putting on our community members is not a burden that many people like. However, it's a burden that's necessary to carry. I only say it in that way and respond because I literally have zero control of what happens with the federal government right now. But I have a lot of community members that I know and trust and love to make sure that their community is thriving. And so this is the moment where the village comes together in a way that perhaps it wasn't coming together last month or the month before or the year before, but it's just got to happen. It's literally got to happen, because when we take a step back, when we're silent, when we are too fatigued to follow directions, then the most vulnerable amongst us suffer. And I measure our success not by who the greatest of billionaires is doing. I measure our success by how our most vulnerable populations are faring. And right now they're scared. Some of them don't even need to be scared, but they're scared. And it's a different type of fear. There's a fear that, I might get sued. And then there's a fear of, I don't have food on the table right now, and I don't know if it's going to come by dinner time. Right. Those are two separate types of fears. And I'd rather focus on the fear of the individual versus focusing on the fear of what might happen right now. There's other people to think about what might happen.
Yeah, so staying in the present. And focusing on what's right in front of you. And I'm hoping, it sounds like you are very confident in our community to help rise to the occasion, to help make sure that Oakridge stays stable for those they serve.
I'm very confident. And if I were living in another state, I might not be as confident, but I truly believe in this state. I'm originally from Mississippi, and I came to Iowa by way of Oklahoma. Two good states, right? They are good for some serious things. But what Iowa is good for is living up to its motto: our liberties we prize and our rights we shall maintain. And Iowa is good when it comes down to doing that across the board. It doesn't matter about your political identity. It doesn't matter about the color of your skin or your gender or anything along those lines. This state has the tendency to rise above all of the riffraff and focus on the humanity in people. Perhaps we backslide here and there, but we have the ability to focus. There's other states who don't have the ability to focus on that. My family members are the recipients of that lack of focus.
Yes.
But this state can do it.
I'm glad to hear that, because, it does feel like we're in a backslide. And how do we instill confidence in the people that are here and want to stay here, to advocate and keep doing the good work that we know Iowa's capable of? So I'm sure your words will come as some comfort to some listeners.
Don't back down.
Yeah.
Don't back down. I mean, we choose not to back down on some of the silliest things, but this ain't silly at all. The livelihood of our community is not silly. The folks who live at Oakridge are good, hardworking people. We have a mixture of American citizens. We have a mixture of folks who were or are refugees working through getting their status. We have folks who are here on work visas, working through a process like they're going places. They're not stagnant.
Exactly,
they may not
right.
be moving as fast as some would prefer them to move, but they're moving at a pace that is good for them. And so long as we can keep people moving forward, I sound like my husband when I say that. He loves to say, keep moving forward. So long as we can keep doing that, then we're doing the right thing. And there's no reason to let up on doing the right thing. Not in that case. That is the most selfless thing we can do as individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do the people that you serve find you? What are different ways, avenues that they come to you?
I would say word of mouth is probably the most popular.
Okay.
Word of mouth is probably the most popular because we offer a unique set of services that are that truly meet people where they are. For folks who have challenges with speaking English, 9 times out of 10, if English was not their first language, if it was their second language, it probably isn't even their second. It's probably their fourth or their fifth.
Yes,
right? If English is not the first language that they learn, they probably speak about 3 or 4 other languages and speak them very well. I wish I could speak 3 or 4 other languages. But we have a staff who reflects that ability to speak multiple languages. And so we're able to connect with them from that vantage point. And so people are attracted to that, knowing that they're learning a new thing, but they're learning it in a language that they can understand and truly grasp the concept in which what we're teaching, whether it's ELL classes or it's financial coaching or it's resume prep, we're able to do that. And so as a result, word of mouth ends up being a very common practice and how people hear about us. Another way that people hear about us is through the news and through social channels. We have a department that does a really good job of trying to connect our message and our story to a variety of audiences that exist. The unique thing about Oakridge services is that there's only one service that's only offered to residents, and that's housing.
Right.
Every other service that we offer, childcare, after school programs, out of school programs, our youth experience and working, all of that is offered to the community at large. And it actually makes our program more holistic when we can do that, because we're learning from each other.
Yeah.
I remember when I had nieces and nephews that were really young, when they would come and spend time with us during the summer, you better believe they were at Oakridge while we were at work. And these were country kids from Okmulgee, Oklahoma, farm kids. And I mean, they knew Okmulgee, Oklahoma very well, but they came here and learned the city folks pretty well too. And they still talk about those experiences and what they learned.
Oh, that's great. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, do you have a backlog, or are you finding you're providing enough services to people? Are there a lot of people in need that aren't being served right now?
There's always people in need not being served. Because we have a housing shortage, there's a wait list for housing, and that's across the community. We know that. And Oakridge is ramping up to do a stronger job in being a problem solver related to the housing component. When it comes down to English language learners, that used to be ESL, English as a second language, and then we got smart and realized this isn't their second language. So if we don't teach them, we might as well teach them right. But ELL, we always have opportunities for people to come in and get taught. However, we're at capacity when it comes down to the meaningful type of teaching that they can learn. Our specialized workshops that our clients need in order to be prepared for work, there's a challenge there in creating more space for them. And so, and here's where the exacerbated need comes. You've got organizations who weren't as benefited as we were with the executive orders. They had to close. They had to let go of employees. They had to stop service delivery to a specific clientele, where those clients aren't going anywhere but to the next nonprofit who will open their doors for them. And you've got to believe that when that happens, you're no longer providing that service at the same cost in which you were providing it, because you're stretching yourself. Things are a little bit more exacerbated. And so therein lies the need for additional resources to work with the individuals that you had previously not planned on working with, but you're getting an influx because of our federal government leading us down this path. So now that we're going down this path, what do? We say, sorry, you just have to get in where you fit in. Well, I mean, being a city mouse and being married to a country mouse, sometimes that may work in the fields, but it's a short-term fix. We can't just let these folks fall by the wayside because they're not going anywhere.
So are you hoping to expand services? I know that you have a campus, and you're also do really well at offering services off campus as well. What do you see in the future of that?
I see that we'll continue to do that work. I know that there's some housing developers that are property managing spaces that are low income or affordable housing. But they don't necessarily have the capacity to offer those wraparound services that will help sustain the people in their community. Some people think that that is a bonus to be able to offer someone that when you're in the business of affordable housing. And so Oakridge is pretty primed to,
because you have the expertise already.
We've got the expertise, and we do it with some developers already, right? And so there's an area where that we're completely and totally willing to offer additional services to folks. I would also say, when it comes down to youth employment, we have recently expanded our program from 21 to 24. And from just summer to year round, for a couple of reasons. One, our 21 to 24-year-olds, they need a pathway to prosperity on their own right. It's such a pivotal time. It is. And I know it was a pivotal time for me. That was around the time I was getting this contract with Oakridge, was in that era. But that group of students or young adults, they need more than just a summer job. Yeah. They need year-round support in this pathway. And so we are more committed to hiring additional year-round. Zami is one of those individuals. She started in our youth employment program when she was very young, working with young students. And here she is now working in the accounting department, killing it, doing an incredible job. I mean, she moves faster than I could even imagine myself in that chair that she sits in. And so there are more opportunities. And, I personally have a great vision for where our organization can go. And that vision is not contrary to where we've been in the past. It's just leaning
Leaning
into it and truly going the distance in a way that we know we're capable.
That's fantastic. I'm glad you mentioned the Oak Futures Youth Employment Program, because it is in full swing right now.
Yes, it is.
How do employers connect with that opportunity to be involved with that program?
So that information's on our website. It's also on our socials. Jordan is an incredible mind. She's an entrepreneur in her own right and an artist in her own right. And she does an incredible job pulling together employers and placing our youth in the various roles. And so that space, we need to see a lot more growth. We need our youth to have tangible work experience before they graduate from college. But that's how people graduate from high school. But that's how people can find us, is through that. And I was a host last year, not knowing that I was going to be getting this job. But I agreed to be a host before I even interviewed for the job, before it was even open, I think. And I had two incredible young women. One was a Drake student, and one was going through her gap year and has since transitioned to cosmetology school in California and is doing an incredible job. But they did good work for me over the summertime as an entrepreneur. It must be
really inspiring to witness.
It is. And, I'll just say, youth employment isn't going anywhere, right? We constantly know that we need to put our students in spaces where they can learn and where they can achieve and where they can thrive. And this program, we've got an individual who's a leader on our campus. He runs our maintenance and our grounds. He started at Oakridge more than 40 years ago as a youth employment intern. He would likely not be where he is today without that connection and without that experience. And I can tell you so many more who have benefited from the program.
Well, I think the retainment aspect that I keep hearing about with Oakridge really speaks to the impact and how people stick with you because of the benefit they're getting from the experience. Even, I think, maybe even your donors and supporters.
Zami could be anywhere. Don't tell her I said that.
Okay.
But she could be anywhere. But, she's a formidable student at Drake and incredible mind. But she loves the commitment that she keeps at Oakridge. And her brother is in our youth program, a younger brother. And it is somewhat of a family affair. Once you get connected, you don't really want to disconnect. And even if you do, you're likely to wander aimlessly back.
Yeah. Well, it'll be nice to share Zami's story in the upcoming episode.
Yes.
So
there's the tease, everyone. Y'all want to come back for the next
tease.
one.
It's good stuff. Let's see. So one aspect that I like that you appreciate is also just financial literacy.
Yeah.
Breaking the cycle of poverty through that, and creating prosperity for those that you serve. What does that look like in motion at Oakridge? How do you?
So I'll tell you how it connects to me personally, and why I'm passionate about it, why it kind of manifests in a good way at the organization. I grew up in a household with an accountant and a banker, and I had minimal figured out when it came down to money and how to take control of your personal financial situation. But I was insistent on trying to figure it out because I was uncomfortable having a lack thereof. I had needs, I had desires, as most of us do, but I wanted to make sure there was a pathway to doing it. And this was at a moment where I didn't have support from home. I'm one of 5 kids. My dad's business tanked during the recession, and so there wasn't a lot that was coming from the house. So I had to figure it out on my own. And so there were moments where, I don't want to say it to be trivial to the experience, but I was literally living in poverty. I didn't know I was living in poverty, but I was.
Interesting.
I couldn't afford meal to meal. I didn't know about food pantries. I was at Drake just waiting for an event to happen so we could eat the leftovers after the event happened. We had RAs who were here over the summer, and they had money to go to the buffets on Sundays, and we would give them Ziploc bags so they could bring us food back. Like, it, rent, I don't know how to pay that. I mean, there were just so many challenges that I experienced. And this was over the course of a couple of years. Never said anything to my parents about it because I knew they couldn't help. And I just felt compelled. I'm the one who left Oklahoma to come to Iowa to go to school. I set myself up for this, so I've got to be the problem solver. And it wasn't until I met my mentor who helped me start my business. She was providing financial coaching within her organization. It was ISED at the time. Deborah Carr is her name. And she really sat me down from a rudimentary perspective to help me understand tangibly what it looked like to be in business and how to take control of your personal financial situation. Fast forward about 7 years later, I got a contract with the United Way. It might not even been 7 years later, maybe a little less than that. I got a contract with the United Way to expand the availability of financial coaching in our community. And that is what really helped me lean in, because we had coaches, we had workshops, we were doing business development. I was learning in my own space how to do better with my money as I was encouraging others to do so. It was a miraculous experience for me. I remember going from not even being in a position to purchase a home, a year and a half later, having everything I needed to be able to do so. And so because I know what that type of coursework and that type of investment can do for me personally, I know what it can do for other people. And I've also seen what it can do for other people. It's
such a core aspect to
it is.
People's empowerment and success and comfort.
Yes. Even if you can figure out how to rub two pennies together, it's something to be proud of.
Yes.
Right? To be proud of. Like, I took control over my money. I told it where to go. I might not have wanted it to go over there to that bill, but I still told it to go over there. So I have the control versus the money having control over how we move and where we move, so on and so forth. And that financial independence takes an individual having access to a service like that.
Absolutely, because there's so many people out there profiting from those in poverty.
Absolutely.
Which seems so backwards. And
that is some of people's business model. If people aren't down, they're not making money.
And how do you get out from under that? You know, it's so good to have coaches and people to hold your hand through that process so you don't feel like
less than.
Yeah. And that's such a big aspect that makes people feel less than when they're behind and people are taking advantage of that. And they know it and they don't know how to get out from under it, you know? So I think that's why I wanted to point out with Oakridge's, priorities and what a great aspect. I mean, the ecosystem is quite big at Oakridge. And I know that's partly what attracted you to it. I know you and Teree Caldwell-Johnson were friends. That doesn't surprise me at all. When she passed last year, the community is grieving. But I loved how she gave you authority to take on Oakridge in your own way. It tracks with how she lived and how she conducted her priorities at Oakridge.
When I first joined the organization, there were folks that were saying, you don't have to do it Teree's way. You don't have to, these are your shoes to fill. You don't have to worry about how Teree did it. And it was so interesting. I mean, them saying that, I appreciated them giving me that space, but if I had gone down that path, it would have been contrary to everything that she believed in.
Exactly, right.
She believed in you being your authentic self and leaning into that in every aspect of your life. She never wanted anybody to follow behind her in the efforts of replicating what she did. If there was anything that she, like, for example, me being alongside her was mainly to learn, to watch. She gave me insight that I probably have never gotten from any CEO, because she helped me learn from her challenges, from her missteps, not just the triumphs. And that's a very vulnerable situation that she put herself in.
Yes.
But I completely and totally benefited from it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Speaking of which, the ecosystems and how Teree was a great communicator, how do you keep the ecosystem and that interconnectedness on the same page? What tools or resources do you use at Oakridge to communicate or keep that network in good form?
Well, that network is comprised of our 80 some odd employees, our nearly 800 residents on campus, and our nearly 100 partners that exist throughout the community. And it's a task.
Yeah.
To me, that's probably the most formidable tasks is keeping all of those things moving on the same timetable, if you will. And it's not easy, and it doesn't happen the same way every single day. But I think the thing that helps us is what Chris provides, which is that story and that message, so that when we do communicate, when we do engage, it's consistent and it's insistent on telling the truth.
That's fantastic. Great.
It's not easy, though. We literally would not, and I wish I had time to talk about all our partners, but you can go to our website and find out all our partners.
Good.
But we would not be able to do this without our partners. I talk about ELL. There was a point in time where we were partnered with, and still are partnered with DMAC, but we were hosting the classes at DMAC. And we were not getting very good attendance, even though it was urban campus.
Interesting.
Literally, I can see urban campus from my office almost. I know right about where it is, but we were having difficulty getting people to come. Now that it's hosted on our campus, we're busting at the seams.
Interesting.
And one might say, let's just move it to DMAC. We've been there, we've done that. We know that there is a set of comfortability that people have with being on site with us. So let's just lean into that. And if we need to create more space, then we create more space. But I
think some people in that position might say, then it's not needed, or they would give up on that aspect.
They would. If they weren't showing, they would make that assumption. You're right.
But Oakridge is not. They figured out what the element was that would make it more useful to those you serve. That's a valuable lesson.
Yeah. We've got good partners. We don't have a space for a food pantry on campus. So DMARC rolls up every single week like clockwork, and they have their mobile food truck, and our residents and non-residents pull up to that mobile food truck. We have other partnerships with pantries across the community with food bank and things along those lines. And so, I'm talking about what we've been able to accomplish, but I think probably the biggest accomplishment at the end of the day is our collaborative effort. The organizations who try to do everything on their own are really putting themselves in a situation to not truly be of service, but in fact create a disservice to the people that they seek to serve. This community has a blueprint of collaborative effort, and Oakridge thrives off of that collaboration. Now, could we do it on our own? I don't know, but I'm unwilling to try it.
Yeah.
Not that way.
Especially when it's working the way it is. If people want to get involved, donate, obviously your website to volunteer, and anything else you want to convey to our listeners right now? So
if folks' hearts are like, I want to do more, but I don't know how, there's a few ways. You can show up and you can volunteer. If you're one of those folks, Deidre, I don't have any time to volunteer. I can't invest in that. That's fine. You can do something a lot more tangible. You can donate $3,500 to sponsor one of our youth going through work over the summertime. You can donate $2,500 to contribute to a family who can't necessarily afford market rate for childcare, but they're working their butts off every day trying to afford putting food on the table for their kids. And they also want to make sure that their kids get a proper education before they enter kindergarten. You can contribute there. You can contribute $1,000 to our program to help individuals learn how to drive. And I'm not talking about youth, I'm talking about adults. We're one of the few programs across the state that are offering adults driver's ed for individuals who are not yet understanding all of our systems that exist here. And so there's the donation component. And then there's ways that you can show up. We have 17 acres, beautiful grounds. But if you have 0.25 acres at your own single family home right now, you know how much that is to keep up with the lawn and with leaf removal and with planting flowers and things along those lines. So if you'd like to come and help get your hands dirty, I don't know, one of the things that I love to do is just to put my hands in the dirt. I feel like I'm doing something when I can make something grow in that way. And so there's plenty of dirt that we can put people in to just beautify our grounds and keep them gorgeous so that people are inspired by that.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. And thank you again for being our first interview.
I did not let you get to all your questions, but
that's okay. That's quite all right.
It was a nice conversation. You got me going.
Good.
The first question got me going.
Good.
This was a pleasure.
Thank you, Deidre.
Thank you.
If this episode resonated with you, we'd love for you to join us in making a difference. Follow Give and Grow on your favorite podcast platform and visit giveandgrowdsm.com for episode recaps, nonprofit spotlights, and ways to get involved. Because when we lift each other up, we all grow together.